Today's likely going to be another short one, but it is going to be a sacred cow barbecue because I haven't done one of those in a little bit. And today we're going to be barbecuing quirky weapons. Everyone loves a quirky little weapon. Everyone thinks they're so neat. You know, that unique weapon that character just happens to have. Well, I hate to tell you this, but unfortunately, the vast majority of them feel like they would be just hilariously useless. I'm sure we could go on about some of the ones in Bleach, but unfortunately they're governed by magic, like that one guy who has like an extendo rubber blade. I mean, we don't know how he controls it, since it seems to do as he wants via his will, so there's no real way to properly judge whether or not that would ever actually work. But it's more along the lines of quirky weapons, and a specific subset of quirky weapons that I find particularly offensive. I'm talking about weapons that are just so stupidly designed that it becomes woefully apparent that no matter how you use it, it's always going to be a detriment to have it designed like that to no benefit. A Grim Reaper-like character wielding a giant scythe is perfectly fine because it's a Grim Reaper in a way, or it's a Reaper-like character. The scythe has a big blade on the end. It might not be as convenient as other weapons, but it's still a perfectly viable weapon to use, especially if the blade is properly aligned to the shaft, like it would be in these combat scythes you see in anime and such. The problem is when you go off the deep end, like the double-ended flail from, I believe it was Batwoman. Like, look at this thing! I have never seen a dumber weapon in my life. This thing is more of a hazard to the person holding it than it is to the person they're swinging it at. It is ridiculously inefficient, and it is actively hindering your ability to use either end properly. And they're playing this off like it's a good weapon. This is the type of weapon I'm talking about. Ones that are ridiculously designed for no reason. And one of the best examples I've ever seen of one of these types of ridiculously designed weapons, I actually got another view of. A brand new representation of a terrible idea, and that's from the anime So I'm a Spider, So What? It's a unique anime in that half of it is really fun to watch, and the other half is actively painful to watch. And I recognize that's not a new thing, you know, it's practically standard issue at this point that, you know, the first half of a show is always fun to watch, full of intrigue and rather interesting, and then they end up inside of their own asshole and end up screwing up the entire process along the way. So the later half is always worse to watch. Funny enough though, this one, via time skips and jumping back and forth between two storylines, decided to cut out the middleman and more efficiently do this, by having the bad half and the good half occur simultaneously and just switch off every few minutes. Seriously, I am absolutely convinced that the people who wrote the spider half and the people who wrote the human-focused half were in separate rooms, in separate buildings, on separate continents, in parallel universes. It isn't so noticeable at first, but it gets really bad really fast, where you're actively painfully waiting for the human half to end, just so you can watch the Spider Girl be fun again. But the thing I'm talking about in this anime is the stupid sword that the vampire girl uses. I recognize that she's super strong and you don't actually have to worry too much about the nitty-gritty of the physics. It's not necessarily important because she's super strong and has magic, but just from the ability to wield the sword, it is actively worse because of the ring that's around her handle. There is no way for her to properly align the edge. There is no edge alignment because the edge is in alignment with the ring, meaning at no point could you have your wrist pass over or be in the same spot as that ring is, so it will always be tilted partially sideways. And the sword is curved somewhat, so when you hit something, much like the katana, even if your edge alignment isn't perfect, it will naturally try to roll to proper edge alignment, because that's how the curve will affect the physics. And this is all well and good, this is great. The problem is, she can't do that because her arm would be in the way of the handle properly rolling to edge alignment. So she'll be applying pressure on something that cannot align properly. The only way this would work otherwise is if she held it with two hands directly in front of her. But that's not an ergonomic way to hold a sword. And just to add to the impracticality, it actively has spikes on both the front and back half of the ring. That way, it's extra dangerous to the person holding it. I know one of the first things that I look for in a weapon when I'm trying to be an edgelord Chinibyo character is by finding out what is the best weapon that has a really high chance to maim or injure me, even if I'm using it properly. Now, this isn't make or break for any kind of medium. It doesn't have to be, at least. There are certain things like, say, Devil May Cry. They have this triple-handled nunchuck thing in that game. Now, first of all, it's a video game and held to completely different standards based on the realisticness of its weapons. But also, it's important to note that while having an interesting story and characters that develop in really fun ways, it doesn't take itself super seriously along the way. But the same problem comes up with the Keyblade in Kingdom Hearts. There's no way to properly align it, and with the design of his Keyblade, if you are not aligned properly when you hit something, it is more likely to roll than, say, her sword is. Even though I would say her sword is definitely a less effective weapon because it actively has spikes that can be used against you on the inside of the handle for some reason. Not that I'm hating on Kingdom Hearts, I haven't played it, but it does seem like a pretty fun game. And you don't get a huge amount of close-ups of it, so you don't really think about the fact that his wrist is probably clipping through it at various points during the game. But you see her wielding the weapon all the time, and the whole fight scene looks ridiculous because you know that she's like weirdly positioning her wrist every time to keep it from being inside of the guard. You can't not see it. It always looks awkward. If you've ever tried to hold something with anywhere near that kind of geometry, it's a problem. And I'm sure someone's going to bring up the Inquisitor blades from the Star Wars series, and no, those don't follow the same thing. Because first of all, they have a reason for being rounded like that. They apparently can spin around that axis. I'm not sure why they need it to spin, but, you know, maybe they do. And it doesn't affect something like a lightsaber. It's not a bad design on a lightsaber because a lightsaber doesn't have an edge that you have to hit with. A lightsaber is 360 degrees of edge. It has spiked black boots, leather belts wrapping around its thigh, and a bandage over one eye to contain some secret dark power. The lightsaber could not get edgier. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I see it a lot in various over-designed characters. I really don't think that's a good idea. You want your character to be special or unique or anything like that, that's fine. You can have a unique character, you can have them asymmetrical, you can have them quirky, and you can make quirky weapons without it being detrimental for the person holding it to be using it. And the main problem is that I can't take any of them seriously. Shadowversity did this first because he was talking about the double-ended flail. And it was stupid. I'm not taking your villain seriously. He's holding the dumbest weapon I've ever seen on this planet. I cannot look at that and say, haha, this is a serious threat to be taken seriously. No, it's not. This person has nerfed themselves by wielding something that is so grand and stupid that it's actively hindering their ability to fight. I'm not going to be able to take it seriously. I'm not going to take the threat seriously. And if they do defeat the hero handedly, then our heroes are incompetent. I don't know. Does this bother any of you as much as it bothers me? Because I'll tell you the truth. A basic character who's just a super badass wielding a basic sword will always be more interesting to me than someone wielding a ridiculously over-designed weapon. I could watch this man walk in with a simple bastard sword 1,000 times and be more invested in his fight than I ever was in this fight. I could watch this character wielding a simple katana and be more invested in it than I ever will be in this motherfucker. Hell, give them an outrageous pattern design on their clothing and they're more memorable. I keep calling her Vampire Lady. I don't know her name, but I know who Geralt is. This is the message to writers. Give some thought to the practicality of the weapon that you're giving your characters. Would it actually work? Would it be a bigger hindrance? What are its ups and downs? If you are doing a lot of combat in your series, then how the weapon works matters a lot. Especially if how that weapon is being used is deciding the fate of your heroes. But it's fine if you enjoy it, even if it doesn't make sense. That's totally fine. I keep saying this just in case someone thinks I'm insisting you can't enjoy things if it doesn't make sense. I'm just saying that it would probably be better, and more people would enjoy it if you put in the effort to make more sense. Feel free to go down to the comments, let me know what you guys think. I'll probably only get 1 or 2 people replying anyway. And I look forward to hearing your takes on whether or not you find them to be really annoying to watch, or whether or not you never even noticed it, or if this helped you learn something that will help you create in the future. That would be pretty cool. Like, share, follow, comment, subscribe, all those things that none of you will do, but, you know, you could, and you can always undo it later. Also, if you don't subscribe, then I'm going to saw Florida off of the United States and kick it into the Gulf of Mexico, and then we will lose all of the funny headlines from all of the newspapers, so you better do that. But I'm sure there's some people out there absolutely livid at the fact that I've disparaged Kingdom Hearts, which I didn't really, but, you know, feel free to go down to the comments and be entertainingly angry anyway.